Hi everyone, we are Alpha Advisors. Thank you for watching our videos. Today we are going to talk about a GMAT versus executive assessment, and especially question types, target business school difficulty, and which is right for you. We are here to help you get admitted to executive MBA and mid-career MBA and full-time MBA. And today we have one of our best advisors, Shaluk. He has a very high score of GMAT executive assessment and earned his MBA at Columbia and LBS, the top business school. So he is going to explain the difficulty and tips for getting high score GMAT and executive assessment. So Sharuk, please start your presentation.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy. Always a pleasure talking to you and giving this live podcast video for Alpha Advisors. So a little bit about myself. I went to Johns Hopkins for my undergrad. I have 2 MBAs, like Amy mentioned, one from Columbia Business School and another one from London Business School. I've been doing consulting for admissions for over 10 years. I had a discussion with Amy, so I also consult for interview prep for the professional world. A lot of very prominent professional consultant, management consultancy firms have outsourced their hiring preparation to me over many years. I was born in Montreal, but I've lived all over the world, as you can see. Currently, I reside between Toronto and Florida in Boca Raton. And I'm very passionate about learning about my students, world cultures, and just education in general. So these are some of my student admits. I work with high achievers, but that's not the only type of student I work with. Undergraduate, graduate, and my students have been all the way from Harvard, MIT, Columbia to mid-tier schools like University of Miami. Well, NYU is no longer mid-tier, but New York, a lot of the UCs, LA, Davis, a couple of students just recently got admission to Berkeley also. So I'm happy to talk to any students once and discuss their preference of schools and take it from there. I work with more than 90 plus. I think this is dated, so it's more than 100 now, perhaps, for international students, undergrad and grad, and hundreds of students from North America, from the US and Canada. And so most of my students, like Amy has said, are high achievers. And I guess the topic for this particular cast is for GMAT versus the EA, so we'll keep it within that scope. So what's the GMAT versus the EA? Both are on MBA.com. The GMAT is a very old test, big brand. The graduate management admission test has been around more than 60 years now, so everybody knows what the GMAT is. The executive assessment was introduced in 2016. It's a lighter version of the GMAT. It's meant for mid-career professionals that don't need to go through the grueling quantitative aspect of the test and are ready to just go give the test within a few months and start an EMBA program or an MBA program designed for executives within a 1-year span. It's a test which I would not say is easier, but it is much easier to prepare for. So I know it's a little bit of an oxymoron cliche, but I'll explain that in our later slides. So the GMAT versus the EA, when it comes to doing the test, it's almost half as long. And the questions are almost half as much as you would have on the GMAT. So normally, when would you use a GMAT versus an executive assessment? So if you are going for a full-time MBA, hands down, 100%, you need to give the GMAT or the GRE. For EA will not be acceptable. But if you are going for an MBA program or a one-year MBA program, you have choices. You can give the GRE if you're planning on going for later education. It's valid for 5 years if you want to do a PhD or a master's later on. But if you just want to do it solely for the MBA, you should definitely go for the executive assessment test. It's a great test. It's 100% as valid as a GMAT when it comes to the executive MBA. Hardly any schools give any differential to it. There is no difference when it comes to your application versus somebody who has given the GMAT. So I strongly encourage mid-year professionals to look into this test. So like I said in my initial slides, the executive assessment test is less quant heavy, just the reasons we discussed. It's more so based on intuition, your experience, and what you have learned and bring to the table in the future compared to the GMAT. So this is important because people often ask what would be a brief description. So the EA is just basically a mini GMAT. It's more business focused rather than math focused and book focused. And coming back to it, the EA is specifically designed for working professionals with a busier life and for mid-career management. So this is a little bit on the scoring of the GMAT. Everybody's familiar, it's a 60-year-old test that the GMAT is out of 800. And the EA similarly is on a same ratio-wise scale down to a 200. It has fewer questions, but you can see that it doesn't have an analytical writing part, and the integrated reasoning is a lot less significant compared to the integrated reasoning is a lot less significant on the GMAT compared to the executive assessment. The reason is the executive assessment is testing you on your reasoning skills based on your prior experience. So this is not necessarily something you have to study deep into. It should have come to you naturally, given your years of experience in the workforce.
So regarding the score, I sometimes heard about, especially for international students, business school admission are very focusing on a quantitative reasoning test rather than the verbal reasoning. So is it true, or is it equally evaluate the quantitative and verbal session?
Thank you so much for asking that, Amy. It's a very important question. So first, there are two parts to it. Firstly, coming in as an international student, depending on which region you're coming from, you generally need a higher GMAT score than somebody applying from North America because it's more competitive now. The second part to it, what you asked, very important. It depends on if you are coming from a country where English is the second language, or if you have not done your prior work or your university studies in an institution where English is the predominant language. So if you have given the TOEFL or the IELTS, for example, then your writing score will be weighed less. But if you have, and your on the other side, and your quantitative score will be weighed more. So, but if you are coming from an English-speaking country or you have been working in an English environment, then there will not be much of a difference. But if we are talking about Japanese students, yes, definitely they will weigh the quant section a little bit heavier.
Okay, that sounded great news too, like especially non-native speaker applicants. Okay. And if there are some like minimum score or the average score, whose score who is like for successful applicant to like for example, M7 or top business schools?
Again, very good question. Normally, when people ask me about scores, I always defer back to the percentile because there can be a 20 to 30 point difference each year in the score. Always refer back to the percentile. For the M7, aim for a 94th percentile or above, which would approximately translate on average above a 730, 720 GMAT score. On the other side, on the EA, that'll translate into the 170s in on the EA. But coming back to what I said, percentile, 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 so 94 plus. And if you're going for a mid-tier business school, you can aim for about 85 to on the lower side, around 81 percentile, nothing below that. And if you are below that, I suggest you give it again, because you're spending a lot of money coming to a different country. You want to be placed in a good school so it can translate to good job opportunities.
Thank you. Yeah, so we will mention after at the end of the presentation, but the applicant have very limited number of times to take these tests. So executive assessment for 2 times in lifetime.
So this is just a brief overview of what happens in the exam. I won't delve too deep into it. You guys can have a look and see that this is basically the realm of what you need to study. I can help in how to study and how to approach it. All my life through hard work, there's no such thing as a naturally gifted test taker, but I've done exceptionally well. I've scored a perfect on my quants on the GRE, perfect on my quants on the GMAT, and I've scored a perfect on my quants on the mathematics sections on the SAT also. I've been off a little bit on the English, but definitely my score has never been below 96 to 94 percentile, even on the verbal sections. So what I tell everyone, there is a method to this. There's no such thing as a gift, and I'm happy to talk to anybody who is looking to discuss strategy on how to approach and how to study. So like I mentioned, there's really no difference. It's a shorter test. It's less quant heavy. And that makes one thing very clear, is that you have to spend less time studying for the EA versus the GMAT. It is specifically designed for professionals who do not have that time, who have families, who have travel. So you can be a little bit more relaxed. And secondly, there is absolutely no geometry on the EA test. So, we rarely need it in life unless you're going into architecture. It's a good thing to have an overview on, but, it's a great thing that it's not on the test. So a little bit about the logistics of the test. The GMAT is a little bit cheaper. The EA will run you around $350. The EA you can do 2 times in person in a year and 2 times online, so a maximum of 4, and you can do it unlimited number of times in your lifetime. Actually, you will not need to do it unlimited number of times, but right now there's no cap. For the GMAT, you can only do it a maximum of 8 times in your whole life. And you can do it online as per the current COVID rules in certain countries, not everywhere. You can do it 2 times in person and 3 times online. But this is changing very fast. I think it's just going to come back to maybe 4 times in person, or maybe they'll allow just 1 single time online. But that depends on the country you're in.
Okay, thank you. So which is right for you is for you need to select a test which program you are applying to.
So yeah, absolutely. Very good question again. It goes back to, if you're applying for an MBA program, just close your eyes and give the executive assessment. If you already have between 9+ or 10+ years of experience. If you're anywhere less than that, even if you're on the border around 7-8 years of experience, you never know what's going to happen in life later. So I suggest you either go for the GMAT or GRE.
Okay, thank you. So for the applicant who are applying to business school and other graduate school, we'd like to thank you. And we are happy to answer any questions. And we have a free consultation at first. So please feel free to connect us via our website. Okay, thank you, Saruk. So everyone, please press a good button and subscribe the channel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.